Everyone, welcome to your January 2023 Patchwork Party. It's Joan Rogers, obviously, here today for you, and I have made the Barn Raising Lite quilt. So here's a picture of it. It will be on full display during Patchwork Party, so please try and join one of the sessions, at least at the beginning, so you can see the full quilt. I love the way it turned out. I want to talk a little bit about the fabric choices, okay? So in your helpful hints, I did talk briefly about it, but if you look at the pattern, it uses mostly tone-on-tone blues. And I didn't necessarily, so obviously that works. The thing that you're really looking for is kind of a high contrast between your medium darks and your light or lights fabrics, because you want that pattern that is created to really stand out. Okay, so when obviously we have kits available, I used Pretty Purple Petals from Marcus Fabrics, and you'll be seeing some of them today. Love the line, and I think it worked really well. It gives a lot of movement to the quilt and interest, I believe. A little more than the tone-on-tone blues that were chosen in the original quilt pattern. Please experiment. Obviously, we would love it if you purchased a kit, but if you want to use your own fabrics, feel free to experiment. I wanted to use some large scale prints too, such as the heavy florals, the larger florals, just to kind of see how they would work. And I think it did really well. So have fun picking all your quilts out or your fabrics out. You want to have enough contrast between everything, okay? All right, so let's talk about, I'll give you an overall. These are the two blocks that make up your quilt. Really kind of easy. If you get through the cutting, you've got it made in the shade, okay? So I'm gonna go through all the cutting today, but this is your basic block. You make 31 of these. And this is your secondary block, and you make 17 of these, okay? So I'm just gonna go through cutting, okay? So the thing of it is, when you look at your pattern, you are going to ignore the first 2/3 of the pattern, because it states that they are using the Creative Grids folded corner clipper tool, okay? And we at our shop have a substitute. So we have the corner pop from Studio 180 Designs. And as you may or may not know, we are a Studio 180 shop. And so this corner pop works just as well. So that's what I'm going to demo. And also Doug Lico's Simple Folded Corners ruler, the original size, not the mini, okay? So if you own either one of these will work, and I will be demoing them, okay? So the way we are going to cut the quilt is listed in your helpful hints. Everything is there, all right? So I'm gonna go through that and then create each of the two blocks in the quilt, all right? But if you do not own either of these rulers and would like to make the quilt, I would say probably my choice would be the Studio 180, but both will work well, okay? All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is work with our background, Okay, and I'm not going to physically cut this because this is kind of basic, but I did want to go over. I'm going to just take this away for a second. Okay, so the first thing that you are going to do is you are going to cut 4 7 1/4 by width of fabric strips, and you are going to subcut 16 7 1/4 inch squares. Okay, so remember, you are totally ignoring the cutting directions on the pattern, and you are following the directions in your helpful hints. Okay, all right. So then what you're going to do with this 7 1/4 inch square is you are simply going to cut it in half. And a little thing that I like to do, okay, just to make sure that I'm cutting straight, is you have a 45-degree line on your whatever ruler you prefer to use. This is an 8.5 by 12 from Creative Grid, but I take that 45-degree white line and I lay that on the straight edge of my square, and then it shows me that I am going from corner to corner, and I have cut this square. Okay, so it's a little check. You're going to cut that in half on the diagonal once. Okay, so that when you are done, you are going to have 32 triangles, 31 of which you will use. Okay, now you are going to cut 3 5-inch by width of fabric strips. And you are going to subcut 17 5-inch squares. Okay. And this is whether you are making your half square triangles the traditional way or a sneaky way that you can use, that I will demonstrate, okay, that I did take off the pattern. Okay, so you're going to cut 3 5-inch strips, and you are going to subcut 17 5-inch squares. Okay, then lastly, you are going to cut 4-inch strips, 2 of them. I'm sorry, 4.5. 2 4.5 by width of fabric strips, and you are going to turn those into 17 4.5-inch squares. Okay, and these are used in your 4-patch block. Okay, so that is all of the background. So now let's go to your mediums and darks. Okay, so I used in our quilt 8 different medium darks. So when the pattern says that we need, well, let me just do this. We're going to make 31 of these blocks. So we need 31 8.5-inch squares. All right. So I'm using 8 fabrics. So I know that I need 4 8.5-inch blocks from each of my fabrics. Your quilt might be different. You might be using 10 fabrics or 12 fabrics or 6 fabrics, but you're dividing however many fabrics you have into that 31 blocks and determining how many blocks, 8.5-inch squares, you need to cut from each fabric. Okay, so, but I am using 8. So what I am going to do first is I'm going to square off my quilt. So in your kit, we are giving you 15 inches by the width of fabric. Okay, so that's what this piece is. And the first thing that I'm going to do, remember I said I'm going to cut 8.5-inch squares. So your directions say 1 8.5 by width of fabric strip. And that will give me 4 8.5-inch squares, which is what I need. Okay, so it might be slightly different for you depending on how many or how few fabrics you use. Okay, so now I'm going to cut my 8.5-inch strip. Okay, and then next, I am going to cut a 5-inch strip. Okay, I'm going to cut a 5-inch strip. Let me just straighten this out for you. Okay. So I'm going to cut a 5-inch strip. Okay, and that's your little leftovers. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cut just 8.5-inch squares, right? So nice and easy. Oops, excuse me. Of course, I'm always looking for my horizontal and vertical lines to line up. My ruler is 8.5 inches wide, so it makes it really nice and easy. Okay, so I've made one cut, and then I would make a second cut, and that would give me my 4 8.5-inch squares. 4 times 8 is 32. I need 31, so there's going to be 1 left over. Okay. All right, now we have a 5-inch strip. Okay, and on your directions, it says cut 1 5-inch by width of fabric strip. Subcut 2 5-inch squares from 7 of the fabrics. And the 8th fabric, you will need to cut 3 5-inch squares. And that gives you the total that you will need to make that secondary block. So let me just cut these 5-inch squares. Okay, so I'm going to cut 2 5-inch squares on 7 of my fabrics. But on the 8th fabric, I'm going to actually make another cut and cut 1 more square. Okay. And what these are used for is your half square triangles. Okay. So they are used to make your half square triangles the traditional way. Okay. So that's where those are going. Off of this strip, your next line says from the remaining 5-inch strip, you are going to subcut 2 4.5-inch squares. So now I'm going to cut 2 4.5-inch squares. Okay. And then I'm going to subcut 'Kay, so I have to make that second cut because this is a 1/2 inch too wide. Okay, so now I have 2 4.5-inch squares. Okay, so you're going to do that from 7 fabrics again. And then from the 8th fabric, and this one can be different from the last time, from the half square triangles. Okay, you're going to cut 3 4.5-inch squares from 1 chosen fabric. Okay, so we are making 17 of these blocks. Okay. 17 of these blocks. So if you cut 2 squares from 7 fabrics, that's 14 pieces. And if you cut 3 more squares from your 8th fabric, that makes the 17. Okay, so that goes up into here. Okay, and they will be all different colors. Okay, the 5-inch squares are used in these pieces. And we need twice, no, we don't. Scratch that too, okay? So this is your 4.5-inch piece, okay? 5-inch pieces for the half square triangles, and that's it, okay? So that's all you're cutting, no borders. So all you have left to cut is binding, and that can be cut at 2.5 or 2.25 wide. All right, so let's clear this out and let's talk about this block. Okay, so this block is using our 8.5-inch squares. Okay, and our background that was originally a 7.25-inch square, and we cut it once on the diagonal. So for every block, or each block, you're going to use the 8.5-inch square and the large triangle that's cut from your background. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the Studio 180 corner pop ruler. And I know many of you are Tucker people, so this will be a little tiny refresher for you. It looks like it has lots and lots and lots of lines. Not remember, but this ruler will make several different sizes, the largest of which is this 8.5-inch or 8-inch finished square. And that's true of both rulers, okay? So these sides right here, the bottom left corner of the ruler, this is using to trim off. So the idea is that we are creating a block that is like a snowball. Okay, and normally we would have done a square on a square. See, and this is always where I get into trouble because I go into too much depth. But normally it would be a large square and a smaller square, and we would sew on the diagonal, and we would flip this up, and we would keep our fingers crossed that it would match, because we're going to cut that away, and then when it's done, we hope that it's an 8.5-inch square. So by using the corner pop or the folded corners, it eliminates that. And what we do is, instead of starting with a square, we start with a rectangle. Yeah, right. Or a triangle. Oh my gosh, Helen's here. And I'm like, okay, this is a triangle. We start with a triangle.
So geometry wasn't your favorite subject?
Absolutely not. I dropped out. And here I am using it all the time. And that's why I don't recognize that this is a triangle. Okay. So a large triangle and your square. So what we need to do is we need to know where to lay this. So these rulers are going to cut off our corner, that we can lay this in the proper position, sew it on, press it, and it will overhang and be too large, so that when we're done, we're going to use this side of the ruler to trim. Sounds good to me. And then we will have a perfect 8.5 inch square, no guesswork. So both rulers work in this same vein. They're just slightly different from each other. So I'm going to refer to the pattern only for a second so that you know how I came to make this or choose to cut a 7 1/4 inch square. Okay, so the pattern says, for your background, cut a 6 1/2 inch square. And that is the square that would be laying down on top of my 8 1/2 inch block. And again, I would sew through the diagonal, cut off the extra, fold, and hope that it matches. Okay, so that information though, a 6 1/2 inch square gives me the information that I need to transfer this to this ruler and to the simple folded corners. So published size for folded corner all the way across, 6 1/2. This is my finished size right there. Replacement triangle square size is 7 1/4. So that is why I cut 7 1/4 inch squares and cut them in half. Okay, so just a little. Okay, so what that tells me is that I am going to cut away on the 6 inch line. I must be moving too much because it got a tiny bit fuzzy. Isn't that funny?
We're going to just take a technical pause for a second.
Oh, there it goes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here we go. So it doesn't matter which corner you take off because it's one corner and you're gonna flip the block however you need it to be. Okay, so I'm going to show you the right-handed way first, and then I'm gonna turn it to the left-handed. So I need to cut away on the 6 inch line. Cut away. So I'm going to lay this line and this line in my corner. Okay. So you can see where that line is there and then right across the bottom. And I'm going to cut if I'm right-handed. Okay, I'm going to cut. I'll just do it this way. Okay. Now, this is where in your hints, don't throw this out. I will give you an option to use this. So stack these somewhere safe. Okay, so this is now my square. This is the 7 1/4 inch triangle. And I'm going to sew it on, giving little dog ears or bunny ears. And it's about a 1/2 inch on each side. Do you need to measure? Absolutely not. Okay, but it's about a 1/2 inch. So just so that you have about the same amount on each end. And what you're going to do is sew your 1/4 inch seam. Okay, and then you can press. Okay, so here I have it. Okay, this is my sewn seam with my dog ears, my bunny ears, and there I go. So now, as you can see, this is too big. and it doesn't look perfect, but we're gonna make it perfect by using the ruler, okay? So let me see, I'll do this the right-handed way again. Yes, okay. So now this section was used to do the cutaway. This section is used for the corner trim down. I'm going, now remember we cut away on the 6-inch. So we're going to cut away on the 6 again. And what's going to happen is we're going to scooch that up. It should fit perfectly from corner to corner. And all of this is extra. Okay, I'm just going to flip this for a second. Okay, if you're left-handed, your triangle is going to go in the left corner. And again, you're going to line that 6 up and you're going to cut. Okay, so that 6 is right on your seam. And we're going to cut and cut. Okay, we'll see if I can do this right-handed. Don't really like squaring up things with my right hand, but we'll see. So there's my left. All right, so now we're going to pull away. And there we have what we have cut off. So it has created a perfect 8.5-inch square, which is lovely, right? There's no guesswork. All right. So what happens if we want to use the simple folded corners ruler? We're going to take that 8.5-inch square. We're going to take our simple folded corners ruler. The numbers are exactly the same, okay? So Doug has a chart, just like the Studio 180, okay? Finished folded corner size, 6 inches, because the square was cut at 6.5. The cutaway line is 6.5. An oversized triangle is 6 1/4. Okay, and our trim line is 6. Okay, so we're going to use the whole ruler. This is the largest size that this can make. So the 6 right here is going to lay just like that. Oh, wait, wrong side. So I should probably, this section of the ruler is the cutaway. This section here is your trim down. Okay. So this particular, so remember it said oversized corner cut at cutaway line is 6.5. So there's my 6 and there's the half. It uses up the whole ruler. Okay, so everything is just going to fit perfectly. Okay, and then we're going to cut off again. So remember, everything you cut away, don't throw it out, stash it for a moment. Okay, so here we go again. 7 1/4-inch square triangle. We're gonna lay this on again so that we have about a 1/2-inch overlap, and we're going to sew our 1/4-inch seam. Okay, nice and easy. Okay, here we are again. So they're very, very, very similar. Same thing again. I'm going to take the 6-inch trim line and I'm going to lay that on my seam. So that it fits nicely, okay? Oops. Okay. So here we go, 6-inch line, okay, right on my seam. And now we're gonna trim and trim so that we have a perfect 8.5-inch square block. And you will make 31 of these. So you can see that this is super easy once you get the hang of this, okay? So the important part is what you cut away, okay? Because if you cut away wrong, then we need some new fabric, okay? So we are on a new adventure. But the cutaway is the important part. Then the stitching and the trimming, they'll fall into place for you, okay? So you're gonna make 31 of these blocks. Next, we're going to do the portions of the 17 4-patch blocks. Okay, so let's talk now about this block here. You are going to make 17 of these blocks, which are comprised of the 4.5-inch squares that you cut from each of the 8 fabrics. We have 17 of those. You're going to use from your background, the 4.5-inch squares. You have 17 of those. And then you are going to create 2 half-square triangle units in various colors to complete the block. It goes together like a simple 4-patch. And when you're done, each of these components are 4.5 inches. So hopefully it will be really darn close to 8.5 inches for you. Okay. All right. So we can pull these away and let's talk about the half-square triangles. There are 2 ways that you can make this. All right. So let's do the original. Okay, let's do the basic first. You had cut, and then you'll have a choice when it's all said and done. So you had cut from the instructions 5-inch strips, and you turn them into 17 5-inch squares. So these are going to be used or necessary if you are going to make the traditional half-square triangles, which are paired with the 5-inch squares in various colors, 17 of them. So if you recall, you had a 5-inch strip, you cut 2 5-inch squares from each of the 7 fabrics, and then the 8th fabric you cut 3 5-inch squares, giving you 17, which will yield 34 half-square triangles, which is what you need because you're making 17 of these blocks and 2 half-square triangles are in each block, giving you the 34. Okay, this is the traditional way. So how do you do that? You take your 5-inch background square and your 5-inch print square and you sew them together. Sorry, I'm reheating my iron. You sew them together 1/4 of an inch off of the diagonal line. Okay, so you can draw a line. I would not eyeball it. I think this is too big to be eyeballing it, but I did have a drawn line in here. You can also use the Clearly Perfect Angles, which I love from Carrie Carr. Okay, so, and then you're gonna stitch 1/4 of an inch on both sides of that diagonal line, and we're gonna cut apart on the line. Okay. So this should hopefully sound pretty familiar for those of you who are basic quilters. This is a basic half square triangle, okay? So I'm going to just press this off camera, okay? So I'm just gonna remember when I do this in Tucker, but you can't talk amongst yourselves.
Well, we could while you do that.
Yes, you could. So Helen, are you thinking you want to make this quilt?
Of course, I gotta, I gotta give it a shot. I
Mhm.
love the movement, Joan, that you get from just 2 simple blocks.
I know, isn't it crazy?
It really
And
is.
it looks like it's very difficult, but it's not, because when we're done, this isn't even on a diagonal set. It's on a straight set, which is awesome.
While
So-
you're pressing, Joan, I noticed you're using your Easy Press pen and fabric treatment.
That's exactly where I was going. It's taking me a while because I, of course, used my Easy Press pen to press that down and get it nice and flat. Okay, so if you are doing this the traditional way, right, we have 2 half square triangles and they are oversized. So I'm going to use my Tucker trimmer to trim them down. Okay, and this is my Tucker trimmer 1. Okay, and I am trimming this to 4.5 inches, right? So if you've never used a Tucker trimmer before, it is a basic ruler. I think it was actually the first ruler that Studio 180 designed. It trims half square triangles and derivatives thereof, like hourglass blocks and combination blocks. It's a wonderful, wonderful ruler. So it has 2 circles on it, a whole circle and a half circle. If you are trimming to whole numbers, that whole circle would go in the right-hand corner if you are right-handed, or the left-hand corner if you are left-handed. Okay, if you are trimming half numbers, which I am, I'm trimming a 4.5 inch square, I'm going to use the half circle. It has a solid diagonal line and then dashed lines, which is, you don't get that on any square ruler. So that's a real bonus. Okay. So what we are doing is dashed lines. I'm making sure that I have fabric beyond the dashed lines and fabric beyond the edge of my ruler, although it is on the smaller side, right? So, oops, slid. And the solid black line is writing on my seam line. So this hopefully is a little repetitive for some people, okay? So I've trimmed away, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. Now my dashed lines are going to ride right on my cut lines, and my solid black line is on my seam. And trim. Okay. So now that you would make your 17 pairings of the background 5 inch squares and your print 5 inch squares. And from each pairing, you're going to get 2 half square triangles, which will give you 34, which is exactly what you need. Okay, so that's the traditional way, and we have cut, I'll say extra fabric to do that. And you'll understand why I say extra in a second. Okay, so that's the traditional way. Now, remember when I said, put these somewhere safe. So this is the corner that we cut away to make our original block. Okay. You can use this to create 31 half square triangles if you wish. Okay, just remember that you are stitching on the bias. So I made a notation in your notes that says before you cut your fabric, it might be a good idea to use best press or easy press and treat your fabric so that this is a little more stable when you are stitching your diagonal. Okay, perhaps not as important if you are going to make your half square triangles the traditional way. Okay, but definitely if you are going to use your leftovers, and I know lots of people dislike throwing away big pieces like this, so this is actually a really cool thing to do, and this is off of the pattern. So you have 31 cutaway pieces, and they need to be cut away a little bit more. Okay, so let's do that. So now we need your corner pop or your simple folded corners again. Okay, so if you recall, this end is the cutaway end. This end is the trim down. So we're going to go to this end. And what we're going to find is the 5. Because we started with a 5-inch square to make our half square triangles. Okay. So we are going to take that 5 and we're going to lay the solid black lines in both directions in the corner of this. Oh, I'm doing it left-handed. Okay. So there's the 5, horizontal line, vertical line. And now we are creating a piece that is perfect for those half square triangles. So this is now your throwaway. All right. Now what you are going to do is if you're going to use the cutaways on 31 of the blocks, you need to cut away 16 or cut in half 16 of your 5-inch background squares. Okay. Oh, hang on. Oh yeah, I'll do this. Okay. So we're going to cut away, or not cut away, sorry. We're going to cut in half diagonal to diagonal. I'm finding my 45-degree line. I'm putting it in the corner and there I am. And I'm cutting. So now to sew those together, you're going to stitch right on that bias. And that will become one half square triangle. Okay, but the really good thing is that you didn't waste any fabric. Okay, so that is with the corner pop. Now, if you want to use the simple folded corners ruler, there are 2 differences between these rulers. The corner pop incorporates a seam allowance. The simple folded corners does not. Okay, so the placement on the simple folded corners is slightly different. There's our 5. But down here, we have to go over a 1/4 inch for the seam allowance. And I know this is archaic. I should be using my G-Easy stickers, but they're in the house and it's cold outside. So I'm not going in for them. So Helen came up with this ingenious plan.
Well, that's better than archaic.
Okay, so what we want to do is take the 5. You know, can't you all be right hand or left-handed someday? There we go. So we're going to take the 5. Oh my goodness, it makes me do a different placement. Okay, let's see if I can do this right. Okay, so the 5, oh no, oh yes, I got it. So there's the 5. Okay, and it's lining up. So I'm just going to test it on my, yeah, I'm going to test it on, no, it's too much. Using my Studio 180 ruler. Sorry, girls, I'm a lefty. Let me get my lefty bearings here. There we go. Now let's just turn this. 5 is going to be, oh my goodness, it's hard for me to read it when I'm that way.
Oh, please.
Stagehand,
Stagehand.
stagehand. Oh, please.
Oh gosh. Oh.
Now you can just twirl it.
Ah. Oh yeah. That was hard for me to read. Everyone knows I'm a Studio 180 person. So there you go. So this is right on top and these rulers line up. Okay.
Let's show them where we're at. We've got the dash, the little dot, little crosshairs over here.
Yep. So this is incorporating a seam allowance for you. Okay. So the 5 is right here. You're going across all those little hash marks. Okay. And then we've added that 1/4 inch and you're riding right up. Okay. And there we go. Same thing as cut away. Okay.
You have to just extend that line back. Yeah, there you go.
I couldn't see it for a minute there. Okay. So there you go. So there is your piece. And, oh, thank you. And then the other half will go right on like that and you will stitch again. Okay. So when they're done being stitched, there's another handy dandy little tool that we love. So just another option for you. This, how do you want to trim these? This is Clearly Perfect slotted trimmers. And we have used these before. These trim half square triangles. Again, up to a 6-inch finish size for both full inch and half inch. So I am using the 1/2 inch piece. And what I'm going to do is line up my 4.5 inch dashed line on my stitched half square triangle units. Okay. And then this grade in area right here is the seam allowance. Okay. So that dashed line wants to go right on my, looking to see if I can, because it's going to go right on, oh, there you go, right on my seam line. Okay. And this will trim while it's still folded. And it will also trim your dog ears off at the same time. So if you're making a gajillion half square triangles, this is super awesome because you can leave them folded until and trim them and then you press them open. Okay, so this is slotted trimmer And the reason I'm using this one is because I started out with it, you know, the 2 halves on a triangle. So it just another option for you. Okay. So we're going to, again, the dashed line is on my seam line. This is the grayed area is my seam allowance. And I'm going to trim and trim. And then it has these neat little slots. And you just slide your blade inside those slots. And look at what we've cut away, so that when we're done, there's my perfect half square triangle. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so I do use that quite often. When I'm just making a few half square triangles, I use my Tucker trimmer, but sometimes if I'm making lots and lots of them, I use the slotted trimmer. Okay, so you can, if you make them that way by using the extras, you will get, and I'm going to go around. Oh, I don't need to. I have other ones. Then you will get 31, half square triangles. Okay. Now you need 34. Okay. So 3 of them have to be done the traditional way. So you would need 2 5-inch squares of your background and 2 5-inch squares of your print. So 1 from each different color. Okay. And pair them together and do the traditional way that I just did a few minutes ago. I know it's kind of crazy, but again, for those of you who really dislike throwing out fabric or wasting fabric, this was an awesome option. Just that I would strongly encourage you to best press or easy press your fabric before you start working with diagonals, okay? Because then they're on the bias, okay? So we now have our units, okay? So we have 34 half square triangles. We have 17 cut 4.5-inch squares, and we have 17 background squares, okay? So what we are going to do is sew them into pairs. So there's my one pair. There's my other pair, okay? And then you're going to sew those together. There shouldn't be any trimming on this. This is good to go. They should hopefully be right around 8.5 inches square, because you have squared everything up, okay? So you have 17 of these blocks, and you have 31 of your basic blocks, which I tucked them away. So where did they go? Oh. There they are. Nope. Yep. Nope. Yep.
Yep, no, yep.
Nope. Yep. All right. Hang on.
That's a new word. Yep, no.
Yep. No. All right. So let's do this. So 31 of these, 17 of these. So now you're good to go. When you have reached this point, and I put that in your notes, okay? The assembly of the J block, which is this, you can follow. Obviously, I just did that with you. The assembly of the quilt top, okay? The boxes that I have highlighted in green are these blocks. This unit is everything else. Now, as basic as this is, now you have to pay attention, because The first one is laying with the background here. Then obviously the next one flips down. The next one flips again. The next one flips again. And then you interject a 4-patch block, and you have to pay attention as to where how these are situated. So they could go this way, they could go this way. It's just all based on your pattern, okay? And then you, for the last one, you flip back to this. So there are 6 blocks in each row, and there are 8 rows, okay? Giving you, what is it, a 48 by 64 quilt. So really nice size lap quilt. So that is it. You are going to put your rows together, each row, and then all the rows together. I, of course, put the rows together, 2 together, 2 together, 2 together, 2 together, then the halves together, and then the 2 halves together, okay? Just makes it a little bit easier for handling. But other than that, you are good to go. So if you have any questions at all, when all is said and done, please come see me. But I hopefully your video will take care of things for you. So have a great time making this quilt, ladies. I'm super excited for all of you, and I can't wait to see all the results. Thanks so much. Bye.